It was a Tuesday morning, and the weather in Massachusetts was miserable. Just a cold, steady rain. I was in the kitchen making coffee, getting ready for a normal workday, when Lauren walked in. She was wearing one of my old shirts and looked like she hadn't slept much. She stood in the doorway looking at me for a second, then held up a piece of paper. "I'm pregnant," she said. She wasn't crying or jumping for joy. She just said it. I stood there with my coffee mug, and for a moment, I didn't say anything. I wasn't happy, and I wasn't even shocked. I was just confused. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to this channel. It would go a long way by helping us reach a wider audience. Thank you. "How far along?" I asked. 9 weeks, she told me. "I went to the doctor yesterday. Everything is healthy." I walked over and gave her a hug, mostly because that's what a husband is supposed to do. I told her that was great news, but while my head was on her shoulder, I was doing the math. We hadn't had sex in 10 months. It started back in May. She told me she was stressed with work at the academy and just needed some space. I didn't push it. Then summer came, and I was traveling a lot for work. Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. When I was home, we were like roommates. We slept on opposite sides of the bed. We didn't touch. By the time winter hit, it was just our normal routine. 9 weeks meant she got pregnant in early March. From March 3rd to March 25th, I wasn't even in the state. I was in Portland, Maine, working on a bridge project. I stayed in a hotel. I had the receipts and the GPS logs from my work truck to prove it. I didn't get home until the end of the month, and even then, nothing happened between us. I knew right then that the baby wasn't mine. But I didn't say a word. I just made her breakfast like I do every Tuesday. We sat at the counter and talked about names. She seemed relieved, like she had been worried about how I'd react. She told me she thought the baby would bring us back together. I watched her drive off to work at 7:40, and as soon as her car left the driveway, I went to my laptop. I started with our bank statements. I found a charge from March 12th, a weekend. She told me she was at a staff retreat in Concord. The charge was for a Marriott in downtown Boston. 2 breakfasts, 1 room. Then I checked her phone records on our family plan. There was one number she was texting and calling constantly, usually late at night when I was out of town. I looked the number up. It belonged to Daniel Harper, a lawyer we had met at a school fundraiser a few months back. I didn't lose my cool. I didn't call her and scream. I called a private investigator named Reyes. I told him I wanted proof. Photos, locations, names. I told him I didn't want a scene. I just wanted the facts. Over the next few weeks, I lived a double life. I went to work, I came home, I kissed her hello. I even went with her to her doctor appointments. I looked at the ultrasound and pretended to be excited while she held my hand. Meanwhile, Reyes was sending me photos. Lauren at Daniel's house at 10 p.m. Lauren leaving his place the next morning at 7 a.m. with her work bag. He even got a shot of them at a restaurant in the city, holding hands across the table. I kept everything in a folder on my computer. I also went to see a divorce lawyer in secret. He told me that since she was trying to pass the baby off as mine, I needed to be careful. I told him I was planning something big. Lauren suggested we go to a lake house in New Hampshire for a weekend with our families to celebrate the pregnancy. I told her it was a great idea. I invited my parents, her sister, and even Daniel and his wife Claire. Lauren thought it was because we were all friends now. I spent that Friday setting up a projector on the deck for a slideshow. I told everyone would be about our journey as a couple. Lauren was glowing. She had no idea that I wasn't making a tribute. I was making a report. That Saturday night, everyone gathered around the fire with drinks. Lauren stood up to make a toast about new beginnings and the family we were building. I stood up next. I told everyone I had a surprise. I turned on the projector, but it wasn't a photo of us. It was a screenshot of the Marriott receipt from March. Then a photo of her leaving Daniel's house. Then the phone logs. The whole deck went dead silent. The silence on the deck was heavy. You could hear the crickets in the New Hampshire woods and the soft lapping of the lake water against the dock, but nobody around that fire was breathing. The projector light was bright, casting a blue glow over everyone's faces. Lauren was still standing with her glass raised for the toast. Her smile didn't disappear all at once. It kind of crumbled, piece by piece, as her brain tried to process what she was looking at. It wasn't the ultrasound of little Alex she expected. It was a high-resolution scan of a hotel receipt from the Marriott Long Wharf, dated March 12th. Underneath the receipt, I had typed in a simple, clear font. 2 breakfasts. 1 king bed. Husband was in Portland, Maine. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to this channel. It would go a long way by helping us reach a wider audience. Thank you. I didn't look at the screen. I looked at Daniel Harper. He was sitting on a folding chair near the cooler, a beer halfway to his mouth. He looked like he'd been turned into stone. His wife Claire was sitting right next to him. She leaned forward, squinting at the screen, her brow furrowed like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Alex?" Lauren's voice was barely a whisper. "What is this? Why are you showing this?" I didn't answer her. I just tapped the remote in my pocket, and the slide changed. The next image was a photo Reyes had taken. It was clear, professional grade. It showed Lauren walking into a brownstone in Beacon Hill at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. The caption read, 9:14 p.m. Lauren arrives at Daniel Harper's residence. I waited 5 seconds, letting that sink in, then tapped again. The next photo showed her leaving the same house at 7:30 the next morning, wearing the same clothes, carrying her work bag. The gasps started then. My mother made a small, choked sound and covered her mouth. Lauren's sister, who had been cheering for the pregnancy just minutes ago, stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward into the grass. "Is this a joke?" Lauren's brother-in-law asked, looking between me and the screen. I still didn't speak. I wanted the evidence to do the talking. I wanted them to see the math the way I saw it. I changed the slide again. This one was the phone logs. I had highlighted Daniel's number in bright yellow. Hundreds of calls. Thousands of texts. I included a few screenshots Reyes had managed to get of her phone screen while she was at a cafe. Messages like, "I wish he was away every weekend," and "He actually thinks the baby is his." That was the moment the screaming started. Claire Harper stood up. She didn't look at Lauren. She looked directly at her husband. Daniel tried to stand, his face a ghostly shade of gray, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Daniel?" Claire's voice was dangerously low. It was the kind of voice that meant a house was about to burn down. "Is that our address? Is that our front door?" Daniel finally found his voice, but it was weak. "Claire, honey, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Alex is having some kind of breakdown." I finally spoke then. My voice was calm. I had rehearsed this in my head for months, and I sounded as steady as a structural report. "It's exactly what it looks like, Daniel," I said. "I'm an engineer. I don't have breakdowns. I have data, and the data says my wife hasn't touched me in 10 months. Yet she's nearly 4 months pregnant. The data says she spent her staff retreats in hotel rooms with you. The data says you've been in my house while I was away, building bridges to pay for that roof over your head." Lauren dropped her glass. It shattered on the wooden deck, the sparkling water soaking into the boards. She started to sob, her hands going to her stomach, the stomach that held a child she had used as a weapon to keep me quiet. "Alex, please," she wailed. "Not like this. Not in front of everyone." "You chose everyone, Lauren," I said. "You wanted the big lake house weekend. You wanted the grand announcement. You wanted my parents to buy cribs and onesies for a child that belongs to the man sitting next to the cooler. I'm just giving you the audience you asked for." My father stood up. He's a big man, a retired contractor who spent his life working with his hands. He walked over to the projector screen and stared at the photo of Lauren and Daniel holding hands at the restaurant. He looked at it for a long time. Then he turned around and looked at Lauren. I've never seen that much disappointment on a human face. He didn't say a word to her. He just looked at me. "Is the car packed, son?" he asked. "My stuff is," I said. "Good," he said. He looked at my mother, who was crying silently. "Martha, get your things. We're leaving." But the chaos on the deck was just starting. Claire had grabbed Daniel by the collar of his expensive polo shirt. She was shaking him, demanding to know how long it had been going on. Daniel was trying to push her off, looking around at our friends, realizing his reputation in the legal community and the town was being dismantled in real time. Lauren's sister was now screaming at Lauren. You told me it was Alex's. You let me throw you a mini shower. You lied to me. Lauren was on her knees now, the glow she had been sporting all weekend completely gone. She looked small and broken. She reached out for my leg, but I stepped back. I loved you, Alex, she screamed through her tears. It was a mistake. I was lonely. You were always gone. I was gone working, I said. I was gone building a life for us. You were just building a lie. I walked over to the projector and turned it off. The sudden darkness felt like a weight. The only light now was the dying embers of the bonfire. The divorce papers will be served on Monday morning at your school, I told her. I've already changed the locks on the Newton house. Your clothes are in trash bags in the garage. Reyes will be there to make sure you only take what belongs to you. I looked at Daniel, who was currently trying to dodge a drink Claire was trying to throw in his face. And Daniel, I added, I've already sent a copy of this slideshow to the senior partners at your firm. I figured they'd want to know about your family law expertise. The silence that followed that statement was different. It was the sound of a career ending. I didn't wait for any more excuses. I didn't wait for Lauren to try one last move. I walked off the deck, down the stairs, and straight to my truck. I could hear them behind me, the shouting, the sobbing, the sounds of families breaking apart. As I pulled out of the gravel driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror. The lake house looked so peaceful from a distance, nestled in the trees with the lights reflecting off the water. It looked like the perfect place for a new beginning. And for me, it was. I drove for 3 hours in total silence. No radio. No podcasts. Just the sound of the tires on the pavement. I felt light. For the first time in 10 months, the math in my life finally added up. I didn't have a wife, and I didn't have the child I thought I was having, but I had the truth. And in my business, the truth is the only thing that holds up. When I got back to my parents' house in Providence, my dad was already there, sitting on the porch waiting for me. He handed me a beer and sat down in the chair next to mine. You handled that like a man, Alex, he said. I handled it like an engineer, Dad, I replied. We sat there for a long time, watching the sun start to come up over the horizon. I knew the next few months were going to be a legal nightmare. I knew there would be depositions and paternity tests and arguments over assets. But as the light hit the trees, I knew the foundation was finally clear. The demolition was over. Now I could finally start to build something real. The Monday morning after the lake house was the quietest morning of my life. I woke up in my old childhood bedroom at my parents' house in Providence. For a few seconds I forgot everything. I thought I was still in Newton, and that I'd have to go downstairs and pretend to be excited about a baby that wasn't mine. Then it all hit me. The bonfire. The projector. The look on Daniel's face when his wife poured a beer over his head. I got up and made coffee. My hands were steady. I checked my phone. I had 42 missed calls from Lauren and over 100 text messages. I didn't read them. I just hit select all and archive. I wasn't ready to delete them yet. My lawyer might need them, but I didn't want to see her name on my screen. At 8:30 a.m., I called Miller, my attorney. It's done, I told him. Everyone knows. Every single person who was on that deck knows the truth. How did she take it? Miller asked. She stayed in New Hampshire, I said. I left her there with her sister. I changed the locks on the Newton house last night before I came to my parents. Good, Miller said, because the process server is walking into her school in about 10 minutes. And the courier just dropped a package at Harper, Klein, and Associates. I sat at my parents' kitchen table and stared out at the backyard. I could almost picture it. Lauren would be in her classroom, maybe getting her morning coffee, thinking she could still fix this. She'd think she could cry her way back into my house. Then, a stranger would walk in and hand her a manila envelope in front of her coworkers. It would contain the divorce petition, a request for a court-ordered paternity test, and a formal notice to vacate the property. But the real damage was happening in Boston. Daniel Harper was a family law expert. His whole brand was built on being a protector of the home. I had sent a digital copy of the entire project review folder, the hotel receipts, the photos of him at my house, the Venmo logs, to the 3 senior partners at his firm. I knew how those guys worked. They didn't care about his morals, but they cared about their reputation. Having a partner who was caught having an affair with a client's wife and potentially fathering a child through paternity fraud was a massive liability. By 11 a.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I knew the area code. It was a Boston landline. Alex? This is Daniel. His voice sounded different. At the school fundraiser, he sounded like a man who owned the world. Now, he sounded like a man who was drowning. Don't call this number again, Daniel, I said. My voice was low and calm. Alex, listen to me, he pleaded. You've made your point. My wife has moved out. She's taking the kids to her mother's. The partners have put me on administrative leave. You're destroying my life over a mistake. A mistake happens once, Daniel, I replied. A 10-month affair with a pregnant woman while her husband is away working is a choice. You shook my hand. You sat at my table. You chose to build your happiness on the ruins of my marriage. I'm just making sure the paperwork reflects the reality. I'll sue you for defamation, he spat, his voice suddenly turning sharp. That slideshow was private. You've ruined my career. It's only defamation if it's a lie, I said. Every photo in that folder has a timestamp. Every receipt is from a joint account I own. Good luck with the partners, Daniel. I hear they're very strict about the morality clause in the partnership agreement. I hung up before he could respond. Around noon, Lauren's sister, Sarah, called me. I actually liked Sarah. She had always been kind to me, and I knew she was just as blindsided as I was. I picked up. Alex? She said. She had been crying. I'm with Lauren. She's a mess. She can't stop shaking. She got served at school, and the principal asked her to take a leave of absence because of the scene it caused. I'm sorry you're stuck in the middle of this, Sarah, I said. But you saw the screen. You saw the dates. I know, Sarah whispered. I'm not defending her. She has nowhere to go, Alex. She tried to go to Daniel's, but the gates were locked, and his wife called the police. She's staying with me in Concord for now. That's probably for the best, I said. Reyes is at the Newton house. He's moving her things into a storage unit today. I'll send you the key and the address. She has 48 hours to get her personal belongings. After that, I'm putting the house on the market. The baby, Alex. What about the baby? The court will handle the paternity test as soon as he's born, I said. If by some miracle he's mine, I'll do my duty. But we both know he isn't. And once that test comes back, I want nothing to do with her or that child ever again. I spent the rest of the day with my father. We went out to the garage and started working on an old table he wanted to refinish. It was manual labor, sanding, stripping away the old rotten varnish, getting down to the clean wood underneath. It felt good to use my hands. Every hour, I'd get an update from Reyes. 1 p.m., bedroom cleared. No issues. 3:30 p.m., closet emptied. Found a burner phone in a shoebox. Do you want it? 4 p.m., storage unit locked. Key is in the mail to the Concord address. That night, I sat on the porch again. The project review folder was finished. The demolition was complete. Lauren was gone. Daniel was effectively finished in Boston law. And for the first time in nearly a year, I didn't have to wonder why my wife didn't want to touch me. I didn't have to wonder if I was failing as a husband. The math was finally settled. I knew there were still hard days ahead. I knew seeing her in court would be difficult. I knew the new versus returning viewers of my life, our mutual friends, would still be talking about this for years. But as I sat there in the dark, I realized that I had saved myself. If I hadn't checked the math, I would have spent the next 18 years raising a child that wasn't mine, living with a woman who didn't love me, wondering why my life felt like it was built on sand. Instead, I had cleared the site. It was empty, and it was quiet, but the ground was solid. I went inside and pulled up my work email. There was a new project in California, a suspension bridge that needed a lead inspector. It was far away. It was complicated. It was exactly what I needed. I hit reply and started typing. The legal process was a slow, grinding machine. In Massachusetts, things don't move fast, but I didn't mind. For me, the waiting was just another part of the process, like waiting for concrete to cure. You can't rush the strength of the final product. I spent most of that year in California, working on the suspension bridge project. Being 3,000 miles away from the gossip of Newton and the stares of our old friends was the best thing I could have done. I lived in a small apartment near the coast, woke up early, and spent my days looking at blueprints and steel cable tensions. It was simple. It was clean. Lauren, meanwhile, was living a very different reality. The legal unraveling, the divorce went through in stages. Because I had documented everything so clearly, the project review folder was essentially the star witness. Lauren's lawyer didn't have much to fight with. We reached a settlement by late autumn. I kept the house in Newton, though I ended up selling it a month later. I couldn't imagine living in those rooms anymore. I also kept my full retirement and the majority of our shared savings. Lauren moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less expensive part of the state. Her leave of absence from the academy turned into a quiet resignation. Apparently, the parents at the school weren't thrilled about the moral character of the woman teaching their children, especially after the story of the lake house bonfire became local legend. Then, in late August, the baby was born. I got a call from Miller, my attorney, on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year and 1 week after that rainy morning in my kitchen. "The baby is here," Miller said. "A boy." Lauren's attorney has already agreed to the DNA collection. The lab should have the results by Friday. I didn't fly back. I stayed on the job site in California. I spent that Friday standing on a high-line walkway, 200 feet above the water, watching the fog roll in. My phone buzzed in my pocket at 4 p.m. It was a PDF from Miller's office. I opened it with steady hands. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. I didn't feel a surge of victory. I just felt a deep, quiet sense of relief. The math had officially closed. The error in the system was gone. I sent a copy to my parents, then I blocked Lauren's number one last time. I didn't need to hear her apology or her explanation. The paper said everything that needed to be said. The final fallout. A few months later, I heard through a mutual friend what happened to Daniel Harper. Claire didn't just leave him, she dismantled him. She was a woman with her own money and her own connections, and she made sure Daniel was a social pariah in their circles. Daniel lost his partnership at the firm. Last I heard, he was working as a solo practitioner out of a small office near the courthouse, handling low-level traffic tickets and small claims. His family law empire had collapsed under the weight of his own choices. I returned to Massachusetts a year later for my sister's wedding. I was walking through the airport when I saw someone who looked familiar. It was Sarah, Lauren's sister. We locked eyes, and she stopped. She looked older, tired. "Alex," she said, nodding at me. "Hi, Sarah." "I saw the results," she said quietly. I think we all knew, but seeing it on paper, it changed things. My parents don't really talk to her much anymore. It's been hard. "How is she?" I asked. I wasn't asking out of love. I was asking out of a strange, distant curiosity, the way you'd ask about a building that had been demolished years ago. "She's struggling," Sarah said. "The baby. His name is Leo, looks exactly like Daniel. Every time she looks at him, she sees the mistake she made. Daniel doesn't want anything to do with them. He's fighting the child support order every step of the way." I nodded. I didn't have anything to add. There was no joy in hearing about a struggling child, but I also knew I couldn't have carried that burden for a man who had tried to steal my life. "I'm happy, Sarah," I said. "I'm building things again, real things." She smiled, a little sadly, and walked away toward her gate. I walked out of the airport and into the cool New England air. My truck was waiting in the parking garage. I got in, started the engine, and checked my mirrors. Everything was in its place. The alignment was perfect. I drove toward the city, passing over a bridge I had helped inspect 5 years ago. I felt the vibration of the tires on the asphalt, the strength of the steel beneath me, and the steady beat of my own heart. The structure was solid. The project was finally complete. Before we end this series, kindly subscribe to this channel. It would go a long way in helping us reach a wider audience. Thank you for following the journey.